Hello everyone, welcome to this session. Our topic is movement. So far in our previous videos, we were discussing the movement in animals, specifically human beings. We saw the muscles and the movement types of muscles, and later on we discussed the muscle cramps. So today let's discuss the movement in plants. We'll begin with the concept of movement in plants. Now we have to know that the movement in plants is what we call the movement of curvature, while the movement in animals is what we call the locomotion. So generally you have to notice that the plants, they do not show the locomotion, that is the movement of the entire organism, compared to the animals which they show locomotion. Example, human beings, they can move from one place to another. The entire body can move from one place to another. Take an example, uh, maybe by walking or running, they can move their whole body from one place to another. However, the movement of the individual plant organs is the one that is possible, and it is modified by sensitivity of the plant to the external stimuli. So the sensitivity of the plant to external stimuli is the one that is responsible for the movement of the individual plant organs. Now, plant movements in response to internal stimuli are known as the spontaneous movements. So you have to note that the spontaneous movements are the movements that plants experience in response to the internal stimuli, while those movements shown by plants in response to external stimuli are known as the induced or irritable movements. So from there, we have two common terms there, the spontaneous movements and the irritable or induced movements. Now from there, we get that there are mainly two types of the movements that are exhibited by the plants. These are the spontaneous movement and the induced or irritable movement. Talking about the spontaneous movement, as we said before, this is kind of a movement whereby the plant move in response to the internal stimuli. Take an example, movements such as movements due to various metabolic conditions, disease conditions, these peaks ages and the parental influences are some of the causes of the spontaneous movements, or just some of the movements which are commonly known as the spontaneous movements. Talking about the induced or irritable movements, this is just the type of plant movement shown by plants in response to the external stimuli. External stimuli such as light, temperature, gravity, touch, water, and the chemical substances are mainly causes or just examples of the induced movements or the irritable movements. Now, induced movements include the nastic movement, tactic movement, and tropic movements. So in this video, we'll discuss the tropic movement. But first, you have to see this table that shows the movement in plants. As you can see here, there's plant movements. As we said, that there are two main types, the spontaneous movement and the induced movements. So talking more about the induced or irritable movements, there are nastic movement, tactic movement, and tropic movements. So, as I said, in this video, we'll cover the tropic movements. But first, you have to know that the various stimuli that the plants act to, they include as follows: these light, chemicals, water, temperature, contact, gravity, gravitatic or gravitaxis. All these are just some of the stimuli that plants sense to and act to movement. Now let's see the tropic movements in plants. The tropic movements are the growth movements shown by a fixed part of a stationary plant towards or away from the stimulus coming from one direction. So the tropic movements are just the movements that are shown by growth of the plant, whereby they are shown by a fixed part of the stationary plant towards or just away from a stimulus or a stimuli coming from one direction. So that stimuli or the stimuli that or stimulus that is coming from that one direction will make the plant to go towards it or away from it. It depends on which kind of stimuli it is or which kind of stimulus it is. Now, the tropical movements are also known as the tropism movements. Now, the tropic or the tropism is growth movements which take place at a very slow pace. So the tropic movements or the tropism, as we said before, they are the growth movements. So they only take place at a very slow pace, whereby you can hardly notice it within a very short time. The growth movement is caused by an increased or decreased rate of the growth on the side of the organ, which is under the influence of such of the stimulus with respect to the opposite side. So this results in the growth in curvature. So the growth in curvature is the result of the various influences of the stimulus respect to the opposite side, where it results to such kind of the movement. Now there are various types of these tropic movements. These are as follows. The first one is the phototropism or phototropic, which is the growth movement shown by part of a fixed plant in response to light. So this can be noticed as a response to light when the plants they move towards it or away by response due to the light as one of the stimulus. Now, the other one is hydrotropism or hydrotrophic, which is, hydrotropic, which is growth movement in response to water. The third one is the trigonotropism, or just as the trigonotropic, which is the growth movement in response to touch. So all these kinds of tropisms are just there because of the various stimulus, or the various stimuli which are there just to act in accordance to the various sensation of the plant. The other tropic movements include the chemotropism or the chemotropic movements, which is the growth movements that are made by the plants towards the chemicals or away from the chemicals. And the last not least, the thermotropism or the thermotropic movement is the growth movement shown in plants in response to heat. So all these are just some of the various types of the tropical movements that are shown by the plants. So basically, guys, thank you for listening. So far, we've discussed the movement in plants. We've seen the concept of movement in plants. We've later on seen the main two types of the movements in plants, the spontaneous and the other. And we've also discussed the various tropic movements in plants. So far, thank you for listening and see you in the next video.